right, thank you everybody for coming. Appreciate you all coming. I'm going to go ahead and call the 2024 annual budget meeting to order. If you'll all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, I'll call for a, can I have a motion for a, to nominate a moderator?
Motion to appoint Brian McDermott.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you once again for the incredible support for my rule over the annual meeting. It's a pleasure for me to be back here once again. So this is a once-a-year process for me, so I have to kind of dust off my notes and figure out how we go about doing this. And sometimes we make backtracks and we go forward, and we already have trouble up here. So it's good. Can you all hear me in the room? Because I don't know how well this is projecting out. So I want to welcome you all. Our annual budget meeting, and it's a pleasure again for me to be here, but I want to be able to say that in accordance with the town charter, the budget will be submitted to a vote at referendum on Wednesday, May 15th, 2024 at the Avon Senior Center in the Community Room, 635 West Avon Road, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. So you'll all have an opportunity to vote in referendum. At the end of this public discussion, we will go right into, we don't adjourn this meeting actually, so we go right into the referendum, which actually concludes the whole budget process when the people of the great town of Avon vote on our budget. So with that, I would like to call, I'd actually like to get a motion to waive the reading of the call of the meeting as it's in your packet here, so we don't have to have our esteemed clerk, Nick Hogan, read the call. So we have a motion for that?
So moved.
I move that we dispense with the reading.
I'll second.
There you go.
That make
That's very amenable. I appreciate that. So we have dispensed with that. So why don't I, since you're talking so much, Houston, we'll have you come on up and present the budget for the Board of Finance. Mr. Houston Putnam Lowry.
Here you go. So I obviously talk too much, and the penalty is they make me stand at the podium. Welcome this evening. I operate as the chair of the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance has approved the following resolution. Shall the annual town budget in the amount of $116 million, $87,973 be recommended by the Board of Finance for the fiscal year commencing July 1, 2024 be approved.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Ann. All right, so we've got slides. And hopefully my eyeglasses are going to be good enough so that I can read them. Otherwise, I'll have to take the microphone and stand. There we go. Okay, this is what the Board of Finance does. The Board of Finance tries to balance the requested amount of spending for services with the level of revenues required to pay for those services. We are not like the U.S. government. We can't print our own money, so the budget must balance. Now this year, I will always go off the slide, and I always make the town manager a little bit nervous. There's been a revaluation. You may recall when you see the mileage stickers on your car, they say your mileage may vary. The proposed budget requires a 3.3% tax increase. How much that works, what your tax bill will be, is not going to be tied to that 3.3%. Only indirectly, because the biggest thing that's probably going to change is the assessment of your property is probably going to change. So if that changes, that affects the underlying change. But the overall net increase is 3.3%. Okay, next slide. Oh, there we go. The Board of Finances considers the best interests of the town of Avon as a whole, takes input from the town council and the Board of Education. We interact with the residents. We have public hearing with comments. We estimate economic conditions, and once again going off script, as the economist John Kenneth Galbraith said, economists are there to make astrologers look accurate, because none of us can accurately predict what the economics are going to be. It's easier in the short term, it's harder in the long term. We're only going out about a year, but even though no one knows what the Federal Reserve is going to do, no one knows what employment's going to do, but we do it as best we can. The tax demands from the other levels of government, estimates for revenue sources and projections. We try to be as truthful and as honest as we can. Future borrowing requirements and the voting history. So, how will the level of service be funded? We have non-tax revenues, which amount to about 15%, taxes and assessments, which are about 84%. As I tell people, when you figure out how much you have, it's a fairly rote process. Then we have the grand list, which divides out how much it's going to require in terms of taxes per assessed unit. So the next slide talks about grand list changes. We have the various levels there, and the grand list increased a fair bit this year. Then we have, on the next slide, our mill rate comparison, which the mill rate, because we've done a revaluation, the mill rate will obviously drop. So it doesn't compare completely directly to last year. You have to go through a little bit of a formula to talk about how it works out. If you need to talk about that, we can discuss it as best we can. My mathematical prowess on that point is a little rusty, but we will endeavor to answer the questions. So, next slide is calculating the fiscal year 24-25 tax increases, and this establishes a new base rate, and then we apply the tax levy to the new grand list to calculate the mill rate. So we anticipate that the mill rate for fiscal year 24-25 will be 30.34. So that's the proposed mill rate. Recommended budget summary. Really quite good at keeping up with me. We've got the town operating budget, and we've got, that's at roughly 29 million. We've got the Board of Education, that's roughly at 68 million. The classical analysis has always been 2/3 Board of Education, 1/3 the town. Does it work out perfectly that way every year? The answer is no, but that's roughly what we expect in light of history. We've got a certain amount of debt service. Some things we do require debt service. We issue bonds periodically, like when we do additions and modifications to schools, when we build large capital projects like the radio for the police system to build a new tower and that sort of thing. Sewers and other financing issues. So, then the last thing is, my thing, please vote on Wednesday, May 15th. Oh, God. If we could have all of my board members stand up. Who's here? Micah, I see you. Kathleen, I see you. Brian, I see you. Harry. Thank you, Harry. And Kathy. So everybody should recognize that members of all the boards, really, are volunteers. They do this out of a sense of civic duty. They are not paid. I once had someone come up and say, you know, it'd be a lot easier to balance the budget if you didn't have such a high salary. We said, well, I hate to disappoint you, but I can't get much below zero. So, thank you all. You make us stronger in the aggregate, and all of you have important viewpoints, and thank you for thrashing them all out with the group. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to call up Dan Paul Hamas as the chairman of the town council.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everybody here, for coming tonight. I know I speak on behalf of all of us involved here in saying that we really appreciate you coming out and learning about the budget that you're about to vote on. There's a lot of hard work that goes into this, and it means a lot that you come out to try and understand this and wrap your mind around it. I'd like to introduce other members of the town council here. We have Aaron Barthel, Barb Osceola, Anthony Weber, and I know Margaret Bratton. There you are. Other people you should know: Brandon Robertson, town manager; Grace Chiesi, the assistant town manager, is in the back; and also Tom DeStasio, the director of finance, is also in the back. Next slide. So at the very base of our process, the mission remains the same. It's to provide quality town services at a reasonable cost to all citizens and taxpayers. Next slide. This slide shows the total proposed budget for fiscal year 25. The Board of Education will speak to their own funding request, not including the operating budget of the Board of Ed. The town, sewer, capital, and debt service budgets total $43.8 million. This equates to an increase of $2.62 million, or 6.35% over the current year budget of $41.2 million. As you'll see, however, much of this increase is funded through grants or other funds that don't impact the tax levy. In particular, we thought we'd have a little more time with the ARPA funds than we do. They need to be allocated by the end of this year, so likewise, you'll see a bump in capital due to projects paid for through ARPA. The increase to the town operating budget, not including sewers, capital, and debt service budgets, is 4.25%, or $1.27 million. There are no new positions. Costs related to the sewers are funded by separate fees and assessments, and we'll break this down over the next few slides. So not including the Board of Education's operating budget, the top three activities funded by the town's operating budget are public safety. That includes police, fire department, the water company charges for fire hydrant rentals. These services encompass about 33% of our operating budget. The second activity is public works. This includes the public works administration, roadways, machinery, equipment, building and grounds. This is about 21% of the operating budget. And then finally, we have general government. This is the town manager, the finance, assessment, revenue collection, and information technology. This is about 11.6% of the town's operating budget. Next slide, please. So our objectives as we reviewed the proposed fiscal year 25 operating and capital budgets are listed here. We aim to maintain capital budget funding levels. The emphasis here is on road improvements as well as municipal buildings and grounds and school facilities. This includes a general fund capital budget increase of $1.2 million year over year. There's about $1.7 million budgeted for road improvements funded through state grants, ARPA funding, and an assignment on general fund balance in the amount of $1.4 million. 1.7 is approximately the recommended amount by a third-party paving consultant. Maintenance at that level will minimize the overall cost of the program and allow us to scale back a bit in the future without having to resort to bonds and the greater expense that comes along with that. The capital budget for education facilities is $890,000. It includes funding for projects requested by the Board of Ed. The fiscal year 25 budget includes an increase of about $1,500 in our debt service payments, so minimal increase. When considered as a single category, debt service and general fund capital represents about $7.9 million, which is stable year over year. Our next objective is to sufficiently fund our long-term liabilities, our defined benefit plans. Defined benefit plans were closed to new employees in 1997. This budget provides 100% of the annual required contribution for those plans to be funded. We're also budgeting about $1.8 million for OPEB, other post-employment benefits, which covers a portion of the actuarially determined contribution to pre-fund for future retiree health care costs, as well as a contribution for current health care costs. Our final strategic objective is ensuring we properly fund our core services. We continue to focus on delivering high-quality government services with a focus on public safety, In addition, we continue to contract with private vendors where efficient and effective. Some examples of this are street sweeping, grounds maintenance, janitorial services, IT services, basin cleaning, snow removal for various properties, and the field irrigation maintenance. Next slide. So here are the main budget drivers. As mentioned earlier, the town operating budget has a proposed total increase of 4.25%, or $1.27 million. The operating budget consists of three categories: personal services, services and supplies, and capital outlay. Personal services and wages comprise about 75% of the town's operating budget. The town of Avon is a service organization, so it shouldn't be a surprise that the primary budget driver is people. Increase in wages and salaries, we have about $574,000 driving that. There's no new positions proposed. Cost drivers include general wage increases, step increases, and an increase in the total hours budgeted for the part-time library employees. We also have an increase in election worker payout, accounting for the early voting for this presidential election year. We also have an increase in the defined benefits, $181,000. Again, the defined benefit plan is closed to new employees as of '97, and as of this writing, there's only 3 active employees remaining on the plan. Based on our current projections, we think the plan will be fully funded in fiscal year 30, with significant reduction in the funding requirement in 29. We have an increase in medical insurance, $176,000. This includes medical insurance waivers, HSA employer contributions. This increase is mitigated by about 19 employees opting out of the plan through the town's health insurance waiver program, as well as reductions to the value of the waiver for certain employee groups, and increased participation in the town's high deductible health care plan rather than the traditional OAP. We have an increase in computer operations and support services listed here too. This is about $85,000. This increase is due primarily to increased support services and hardware and support provided by Cooperative Systems, which is our managed services provider, and other third-party vendors. Next slide, please. So the total capital budget is $6.5 million, $6.55 million. The general fund capital budget for all funds has increased by about $1.2 million when compared to fiscal year 24. Some highlights here are $1.69 million for road improvements, $890,000 for Board of Ed projects, including Phase 2 of the high school roof replacement. There's a pre-K playground replacement at Roaring Brook, the AMS entrance door replacement. Thompson Brook tennis and sports courts are being replaced, and we have various security updates through the district. We also have $620,000 for the replacement of the Tillotson Road Bridge, $460,000 for replacement fire department vehicles, a tanker and a truck chassis. We have $450,000 for upgrades to the Public Works facility, which is in dire needs of it. We have $365,000 to replace sidewalks along portions of West Avon and Scoville roads, $250,000 for the reconstruction of Cider Brook Road, $200,000 for design work related to the improved Avon Volunteer Fire Department facilities, $200,000 for replacement DPW vehicles, Department Works vehicles, and $162,000 for replacement police cruisers. As I mentioned earlier, and as denoted here with asterisks, many of these items included in the CIP are offset by grant funding, special revenue funds, or other funding sources outside of the tax levy. These include $205,000 in sewer projects. Those projects are funded by the sewer use fees charged to the sewer users. Also included are $906,000 in ARPA projects, $182,000 in projects funded by the Fisher Old Farms Special Revenue Fund, and $269,000 funded by state grants. Again, one of these funding sources, none of these funding sources affect the tax levy. In addition to these, it's important to note that the general fund capital budget is offset by the use of about $1.4 million on general fund balance for road improvements that was made possible due to the positive operating results in fiscal year 24. Next slide, please. So we regularly review the tax relief programs available to seniors or those who are disabled. In December of last year, we increased the income eligibility threshold to $69,000. This benefit increases annually with the increase in the tax levy. There's a list of the various tax relief programs available online. The application deadline to take advantage of these is May 15th. If you go to the next slide. So this slide actually illustrates how we stack up to some of our neighbors in the valley, and as you can see, that's quite competitively. Next slide, please. So here again is the proposed budget. For this year, we have a 5.44% spending increase, but with a substantial chunk of that funded outside of the tax levy. In the hypothetical scenario in which we hadn't had a reval, this would equate to the 3.3% increase in the mill rate. Given the reval, this is a 3.3% increase on average. As noted by Houston, due to the reval, this means a decrease in the mill rate, variability in the reval, and shifts in what property characteristics are valuable now relative to 5 years ago means that around half of taxpayers experience more than the 3% increase, the other half experience less. This is really no different than what happens every 5 years at the reval. There are no new positions on the town side. Capital is primarily maintenance-based work. This town is a service provider. Those services are subject to the same inflationary pressures that we all experience in our daily lives. The town has consistently provided these services with increases less than the rate of inflation. To me, that's a strong indication of fiscal responsibility. Last slide, please. So yeah, here's just a list of how you can get more information on what's happening in Avon. Visit the website, www.avonct.gov, and you can sign up there for email alerts of upcoming events and whatnot. We also have a Facebook page. Go ahead and like the Facebook page, and you can get more information there. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Finally, I'd like to call up Deb Shute, the chairwoman of the Board of Education, for her report.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. It's my privilege to be able to introduce my board to you. So if you don't mind, I'd like if you could stand when I call on you guys. Thage Singh, our vice chair. Lynn Katz. Suzanne Zakaris. Chris Campbell. Nicole Russo. And also our regards from Jeff Fleischman, our secretary. We also have Sarah Thompson, who couldn't make it, and Ramesh Kadapilli. So I know that many of you have come to these over the years, and you know there's a great deal of time, effort, and heart that goes into the decisions that are made to present a budget to you. We truly feel that it is a responsible budget and it meets the needs of our students. We continue to attract families to town because of the standard of quality that Avon provides. And so I am grateful to have Susan Russo, our business manager, here with us, who helps design. If Susan, you want to stand as well so they can acknowledge you. And now I will have our superintendent, Dr. Bridget Heston-Carnamola, present our budget to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Grace, thanks. So, on the board side, obviously we also have our mission that we usually start all meetings with. I'm not going to read to you. I know you can see that on the screen and the packets that were handed out. The basis for all of our decisions as we make our budget, strategic planning, and so on are based in this mission, in addition to the goals that we set as a school district, which I'll vaguely review tonight because I know we're here to talk more about finance than we are some of the rest. So from a process standpoint, we started talking about where we are tonight more than a year ago. I think as colleagues said up here this evening, it's hard to propose where every penny will be spent over the course of a coming year until we see some of what comes before us in terms of student needs and so forth. But in trying to project forward by the number of students that we have, by the needs that present themselves, at least at the time, and what we see coming through the grade levels and in town in general, surveying parents, for example, as we do now, trying to determine who may have kindergarten age students at home, because kindergarten is another place where it's often difficult to gauge how many will land with us. These are some of the pieces that we are doing much more than a year in advance and continually retooling as the year goes on. But that said, you can see the general process started in October, went through the Board of Education, and the last two public hearings here brought us here this evening. Our main goal is to develop a fiscally responsible budget that meets the needs while ensuring, to the extent that we can, that number one, we utilize as much as we can by way of grant funding and non-tax revenues to be able to support the budget. We have done that consistently throughout the last 5 years, at least I can speak to, and there's been much more federal and state money that has come down the pike for the school district as well. That said, we also have to continue to meet our student needs and continue programming to do that as one of our strategic goals. Just a few highlights of the accomplishments, obviously. You know, people like to see what it is we're doing, so to speak, big picture, with the money that is provided via both tax revenue and grant and or state and federal funding. One particular point I'd just like to highlight here, how proud we are to consistently produce students of the caliber that we do, as you know, coming through the Avon Public Schools, to have 15 National Merit Scholarship finalists and commendations is unheard of in most areas. We do certainly a lot more than what is on this list, but I think that hitting the highlights a bit of the kind of education that we are looking to provide our children in town speaks for itself in some of our highlights. Keep going on, Grace, for me. Thank you. So first, let me say that this increase is one that we didn't bring lightly. First of all, we start with what I think everyone here already knows we've spoken about in the past, a zero-based budget. We zero out every line as we move from one year to the next and go line by line through. If you've picked up the packet, there's thousands of lines and pages in this budget. And we start over again. How many students do we have in each class? How many teachers do we have in each building? What are the needs of the students? What are the mandates that we need to meet? Where can we cut back so that anything we do have to add in is not pushing the percentage higher, but trying to mitigate it. And in this year, as you'll see as I go through a couple of the next slides, the vast majority of this increase is due to changes in needs of the student population and the number of students that we have in certain facets of the school district. So we landed at a 4.97% increase. We try to start with a zero, and we always work to keep it, as I've been told since I have been here in town, below 3%. Ideally, as I said, ideally it's zero. If we can't do that, we try to stay below 3%. So this is not the norm of what we bring forward from the Board of Ed side. Go to the next slide for me. So we have fixed costs in quotations because I think depending on who you speak to, their definition of a fixed cost might be different. Some refer to contractual obligations as fixed costs. Someone else might say that's not necessarily a fixed cost. You negotiate those contractual obligations, for example. What we are referring to as the fixed costs here have more to do with what the needs of the students are that can't be changed, that need to be met. And also, as you can see, a very large increase in the insurance premium, which I know Dan and Houston already spoke to. So if you go down to the bottom of this slide, with no other changes to our budget, no additions, these amount to a 2.74% increase overall, year over year. So $938,301 of the increase is health insurance alone. And that represents about nearly a 1.5% increase year over year. So if we had no other increases in salaries and supplies and transportation, anything, we come out of the gate with a 1.5% overall increase from last year. Transportation up by $76,583. We have a negotiated contract for our buses. They have been very good in our negotiations with them. We've actually have a lower increase percent year over year than most towns in the state do, which is good. On the flip side, we have more bus runs, and we also have changes in, as you can see, under special education transportation, an increase of over $288,000, almost $289,000 year over year. Those obviously are transportation costs related to students with special needs. An example of that, one child in a wheelchair, the van costs about $100,000 for a year. The other thing I would point out is some of these we have incurred in the current year. So, for example, when and if a child moves in that has needs that are above and beyond what we had budgeted in the previous year, for example, we can't necessarily know that a particular child may move in that needs a nurse. That would fall under contracted services, a one-to-one nurse. Needs a wheelchair van would be another example of that. So when you look at just these special education increases, $517,146, those are all requirements that we need to meet for the needs of the students that have presented themselves in the school district. Software, the $188,118 was as low as we could carry the increase forward because we have databases such as PowerSchool, Infinite Visions, things that we need to comply with state and federal law to maintain student data privacy, to conduct financial business, and unfortunately, as a result of COVID, that's one more, the COVID reaction, the pandemic, that's one more piece that has been increased for all of us. A lot of things were either zeroed out during the pandemic and technology-wise, we either didn't see an increase, or we saw a small increase, and then once some things even being given away for free to school districts in terms of technology at that time that have turned into required pieces moving forward and have seen significant increases. This increase in software is an example of that. So again, without these increase, our overall increase would actually only be 2.23% over last year. So if we did not have to add these in, the increases in insurance, transportation, all other benefits, which Social Security, disability, and so on, because it are fixed, we would have been looking at a 2.23% increase this year. Go to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. In terms of new salaries, there are 3 new positions in this budget. One is a school social worker for the elementary schools. The other, they're stipend positions, the 2 that you see that are unified sports spring coaches. Those are stipend positions, $6,541 each. There are 2. Unified sports is a form of athletics for students who are disabled in a way that they may not be able to participate in regular athletics. All students can participate in regular athletics. They're not disallowed to do so. However, we do have some young people that are unable to fully participate in regular athletics, and we have added unified sports in over the past, I believe, 4 years to do that. We started off with 1 team 4 years ago, the unified basketball team, and we have since added in track. That's this is track, and last year, thank you, soccer. The social worker, we have honestly a need for another social worker at both of the elementary schools based on the needs of the students that we are seeing and the individualized education plans and 504 plans, specialized plans for students, and the counseling services that they need. We absolutely could fill the time of another social worker at both schools, but again, looking at a budget increase such as this one, we made the decision to put 1 social worker as an addition to this budget and split it between the 2 schools in this coming year and see if we can make that work. It's our hope that we can, because The flip side of that is sometimes contracted services, which end up costing more money in many ways than employing our own people. So we are looking to add that one position in this year. And just for a frame of reference, Pine Grove School alone in the current year has 761 students in it from grades K to 4. The high school at present, I believe, has 900 as of last week. I think it's 989. And there are already 2 social workers there. One that we put in with ARPA funding because it was an effective use of one of the particular grants that they would actually give to us in Avon, because as you know, by now I'm sure the state and the federal government is not often very generous with the funds that it will give to Avon, and ARPA funds were not necessarily any different than others in comparison to what some other towns got. But we had needed another social worker at the high school for some time, and we built that into our budget 2 years ago with ARPA funding, and then had to move it, as you can see, to the local budget. We knew that, we planned in advance for that, and we mitigated that with some of the other positions that we looked to either move or eliminate over the years. Just as a frame of reference for you also, back to the preschool, I don't want to read to you what's on the screen. We have an increased number of students registering for pre-K. Pre-K is not required in the state of Connecticut for general education students. It is required, however, for students who have special needs. So a student that registers for school as a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old that has special needs that would require an IEP, individualized education plan, or a 504, they have to be given pre-K services. And the side note to that is they have to have non-disabled peers. So what that means is if we have 25 students register for pre-K, it's always more than that. I'm just using that number to make it make sense. If we have 25 students register for pre-K, then we must work to enroll another 25 students that do not have special needs, so that there is a balance between students who have special needs and who are, quote, regular education students. Often we don't know that, actually, when they come in as 3 or 4-year-olds. Sometimes the 3 or 4-year-olds that we enroll via tuition in pre-K as non-special education students will later present needs because they are so young. Their parents and their pediatricians or other outside daycares may have not even found that out before they arrive with us, which sometimes throws another wrench in the works related to pre-K spending. I bring that up because it is a larger part of the increase to this budget. We had to add in the year that we are living in after the budget was passed. We had to add in a preschool teacher. We had to add in two paraeducators to go into that class because that's how a pre-K class is run programmatically. 1 teacher, 2 paraeducators for each pre-K room. In addition, so that's 5 of the 7 paraeducators added in that you see up there. The other 5 were additions after last year's budget for students who needed them for one-to-one assistance. 1 student, 1 paraeducator as part of an education plan related to their special needs. So part of the driver, again, in this increase are the needs that presented themselves even in the year that we are living in at present. Teaching assistants, likewise, that's a smaller overall bill. The addition of the 7 of our TAs totaled $206,136. Most work part-time. We actually had to do a lot with scheduling, trying to hire enough of them. Many of them are folks who live in town, moms or dads or grandmas or aunts or uncles that only want to work part-time. Maybe we'll work in the morning or the afternoon. So it's 7 positions, but I believe it might actually be 12 people that filled those 7 positions to be able to provide the assistance. When do we add teaching assistants? When the numbers of students in classrooms go above certain amounts, and the amount depends on the grade level. So some of it is contractual by the teacher's contract, the cap of the number of students that can be in any particular classroom by grade level. The rest is, again, by student needs. So we might have a second grade classroom with 20 students, and there could be 21 students by contract. We'll sometimes have to add in a teaching assistant anyway, based on the needs of the students that are in the classroom. Bottom, our contractual obligations, back to whether or not you consider these fixed costs. These are negotiated years in advance, and they range from a 2.25% increase to a 3% increase, depending on which union contracts we are looking at and what year of the contract that they are in. And that brings us to this entire section being 2.84% over last year. Go ahead, Grace. For the visual folks, just a different way to break it down. As I think Dan already said, it's a people business. The majority of our funding is in salaries to work with the students. We usually hover around 80% of the entire budget being salaries. It's pretty standard in a school district. Keeping it below 80% is what we aim for from the fiscal standpoint. One other thing I'd like to point out, because I know there are some folks with us here tonight that I don't think we saw in the last two meetings, and so something that you may not know when you look at tuition. I get this question pretty often: what does tuition mean when we are a public school? So ideally, both because it's the right thing to do from an educational standpoint and also because federal and state law requires it, we work to keep all of our students in the district, no matter what their needs are, no matter how severe some of the special needs might be for students. However, when a child is presenting needs that go above and beyond what can be managed in the public school setting, then we are at times responsible for them to go to what we call an outplacement. And the district pays for that. Sometimes it pays entirely. Sometimes it's a portion paid by parents, or sometimes a portion paid by a parent insurance. Most often, the school district pays for the majority of it, if not all of it. Since I can see that a couple of people did have this question, I'll mention this. We haven't talked about this in a previous meeting, but I think maybe it's within the last 10 years. I don't remember exactly what year it was, at least 5 years ago. Another law was passed whereby school districts, in many cases, are also responsible for residential placements of students also. In the past, we were only held liable, so to speak, for a day program, day schooling. Now, when and if a child's needs are detailed enough that they need a residential facility as a school, very often the town that they are coming from or the region that they are coming from is paying the entirety of that tuition. So we do our best, as you can see, by the programming that we put into place to keep our students here with us in Avon. One, it's usually what's best for them. And two, it's almost always, not always, to be honest, but almost always more fiscally responsible to do the same. We run our own programs related to autism, related to other behavioral needs, and throughout the school district, from pre-K to 12 and beyond, because the law requires us to educate students who have special needs until it used to be the age of 21. This year they actually changed that to 22. So you'll find sometimes that we still have students with us at the high school beyond 18, or much like this outplacement tuition, you might see us place a student in another setting for a transition program from their school setting into life, whether that be a job, furthering their education, or sometimes potentially with the Department of Mental Health Services in a group home or the like, depending on what their family situation is at home. We are the bridge until they do one of those things legally. Grace, thank you. So again, just another way of looking at it. The year over year, you see in the first column, this is what's proposed for fiscal year 24-25. Point out here that while it may seem, I guess, in the grand scheme of things with a budget as large as we manage to be, quote, small potatoes, when you look at a couple of the lines that are negative and not increases, I'm pointing them out anyway because we worked at decreasing those lines, as small as it might be, to try to mitigate some of the other pieces. So for example, supplies and equipment, it's down $38,930.98, but that's a result, again, of going line by line looking for anything that we would be able to reduce in this budget. Likewise, utilities, we are down $128,064.26. I think everyone's utilities costs are up. I can't speak to a direct correlation between us working from a financial standpoint. I can't put numbers up on the board that are going to show you a direct correlation between putting in all the LED lighting and the programs that we did with Eversource over the years and some of the solar pieces that have been put in to say that's where the money came from. I can't do that, but I can tell you I think it has made a difference when we look at the way the utilities have gone over the last few years, number one. And number two, we've been as diligent as we can be about conservation of use and putting policies into place regarding technology turn off and some pushing out things so that computers don't stay on all night long, for example. Some of the types of things that we have been able to control, we have put into place to try to reduce our utility spending. Go ahead, Grace. And just another example, you can see how this shakes out. The bar graph. And one more time. It's just a different way of looking at the drivers, the increase of related to each driver. So $2.9 million in salary and benefits of an increase, 86.93% of the increase. One more piece I'll add in, and obviously happy to answer any other questions that you might have. Our health insurance increase of 14.2%, as you already heard from Dan and from Houston, part of that is a correct, so to speak, from the brokers from over the years. They have been recommending that a change be made to the amount of funding that the town of Avon puts toward insurance. We are self-insured. So when we talk about insurance premiums, sometimes that gets in the way of really bottom line where the money is coming from, because it is coming from the same pot from the town of Avon. We as the Board of Ed contribute the funds into the town's account. The claims have increased, but also we have been told by our brokers as a whole, the town and the board, to increase what we are contributing to bring the funding back to a level that the actuaries like to see it at, to make sure that claims can be paid in the future. That's, Tom, I'm sure there'll be more questions about that. I'm not going to stand and pretend to be an insurance expert, have insurance expertise, but what I do know is that if we funded it at the level that they asked, it would be a 17% increase. So we've been adding on more each year to come back to an agreeable amount. But at 14.2% and $983,000 increase, that seemed to be the only reasonable thing this year for us to do, to recommend the minimum of what they had asked for. Thank you.
Are there any other town officials that wish to speak tonight? I can invite the council and others back up. So I just want to go over a little bit of the ground rules of how we're going to proceed tonight. There's quite a few people here tonight, and we want to be able to give everybody an opportunity to be able to speak. And what we do is, in past years, we found it successful to go in rounds. So if you come up to speak, you have each person has 3 minutes to be able to speak, and then we wait till everybody has had the first round, and then we can invite you to come back up again and speak again. And then, time permitted, we would wait till that, have anybody come up and speak a third time. From there, we're going to have to limit things because I believe the library closes at a certain hour that we would be beyond or coming up to that point. So I'm here to run things a little smoothly. Please don't get upset with me. When the clock goes off, we'll get you a 3-minute timer. I'd ask you to please summarize quickly, sit down, let somebody else come up to speak. And this is actually an opportunity for you to speak to your fellow neighbors. This isn't the night to get back and forth into a debate with any of the officials or to be able to get the question-answer process tonight. This is an opportunity for residents to be able to speak their mind, convince other residents of what their positions are on the budget and where it goes forward. So I just want to be able to read the call of the meeting again so we know what we're talking about and what you're discussing tonight. Shall the annual town budget in the amount of $116,087,973 is recommended by the Board of Finance for the fiscal year of July 1st be approved? That's what we're discussing this evening. I'd ask anybody to come up and stand at the center line. We don't have a microphone tonight, so I'm going to ask you to speak loud. If anybody wants me to repeat the question, I'd be happy to try to summarize and repeat the question. Yes, ma'am.
Where are you on?
Just in the middle of the aisle, and you can address the...
Yeah, I'm not afraid to talk about it. I'm Terry Nicholas. I live on Anvil Drive. I've been in town 45 years or more. You say that you look at us as a whole. No, you don't. No, you don't. You look at those people in the town that have more green stuff than others. And all of you here on the board, you know which one said the thing about the latte. You know, you all know. They all know who said something about the lattes. And not one of them said, how could you say that to the people in the town of Avon? Because one person said it. Don't tell me that you all don't know they said it. And not one of you said, wow, how can you say that about our town?
What did we say?
But they did. And you know what? I don't care to know who said it. Because they live with that, not me. And if none of you like me, that's okay. A lot of people in the world don't like me. I don't like a lot of people either. But I've lived in this town 45 years. My kids have been through all the schools. You're for everybody at the schools? No, you're not. No, you're not. 2 of my kids had some special needs. My daughter got a scholarship for, I forget what it was. One of the guidance counselors was sitting in front of us before she was going to get it. She actually said, what are you doing here? My daughter-in-law teaches in another town. She's bilingual, special needs, and has 2 or more masters. Is she making what you're making? Absolutely not. Avon's not the only town to get a good education either. And I heard that from a teacher that taught in our Avon schools for 46 years. And she personally told me, don't think Avon's the only town, all right? And our superintendent, you got up and you said we're going to have some social workers. That's great, but did you give any specifics as to why we're going to have social workers? No, let's hide that. Oh, no, not in our town. What are we going to have the social workers for? There's domestic violence in our towns. Are those social workers, is that part of their major when they go to school to know how to work with kids that have been victims of domestic violence in their homes and they're coming to school every day? Or their parents, the father's being abused or the mother's being abused? Does that social worker, has she or he had education? Has that been part of their major? We also have substance abuse issues. Don't think that we don't, because we do. I'm not perfect. My kids are late 30s and 40s. I'm 69. So I've been around a long time. I'm a substance abuse therapist. There's a lot of substance abuse issues in this town. Do these social workers have that training specifically to know how to deal with these substance abuse issues with our parents and with our children, and it's a disease. But does a social worker really have training? When I went to school, I met a lot of social workers.
Thank you very much. The 3 minutes
So no,
are-
you're not as a
are-
whole. All of them should be taken off. We need a whole new board. And we need to start thinking of those
Thank you,
that are
ma'am.
losing
I
our homes.
appreciate your discussion. I'd like to just be able to remind people to try to keep the, I don't know what's going on my timer. I guess nobody else can speak, so the timer's gone. Turn the volume off. I'd like to remind people to kind of keep it to the issues at hand of the budget discussion. So we have limited time, so we want to be able to make sure that we can get addressed the budget concerns as we go forward, and we don't get too negative against anybody in particular. Not saying anybody was, but these are your 3 minutes to use, but try to keep it on the budget. Excuse me, anybody else like to
That
speak?
was the budget. What are you
Yeah,
talking
thank you.
about?
I'm just giving a message to
No,
everybody.
you just didn't want to hear the
You
truth.
you had your 3 minutes, so we
You
appreciate
didn't want
that.
to hear the truth.
Why can't,
Thank
None
you.
of you wanted to hear the truth.
Yes, sir.
There's-
Thank you.
Wondering
What's
how
it gonna
much
take to
of
go
an
higher?
increase is the town getting from the reevaluation, even lowering the mill rate? What percentage is it? Another 2%, 3%?
Again, this is not it's a forum for question and answer, but I don't know if anybody wants to answer a question quickly enough. We want to be able to move things along for more of a discussion on what we're having, but.
Well, this has
I can
to
answer
do
that
with the
quickly.
budget.
All right.
Yeah, I can answer that quickly. So we lowered the mill rate
Correct.
so that the increase is 3.3%. And so that's what we're looking at is, and discussing, is an overall budget increase of 3.3%.
But there's nothing more on top of the
No.
3.3%?
No.
No.
And
That's
what
why the mill rate
this
comes
question about people going to be paying less and people going to be paying more, I mean, what?
That's because the reevaluation affected different properties differently. And so the 3.3% is for the entire grand list. And your contribution to that grand list, your property's addition to that grand list is affected by the reevaluation, either more than or less than the average.
Is there any way of disputing the revaluation?
Yes, there is.
well,
Yeah, we have
that's nothing to do with the budget.
process by
I know,
which you
that's
can
VA stuff.
appeal the reevaluation.
And what information do you need for
Listen, I'm trying
Generally,
to.
in
But not
That's,
disability.
you'll speak to the assessor's
Yeah.
office. Speak to the assessor.
A benefit of $1,500 is nothing.
There will be people hereafter sort of be able to answer questions like that, specifically be able to find the websites and get to the answer to that with the Board of Assessment Appeals. Here's those kind of things. One thing I do think, sir, before you sit down, you need to get your name.
I'm moving.
73 Chevis Road.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I forgot to mention that earlier, we do need your name and address when you come up to speak, so the town clerk can keep that for the record. Anyone else?
Mr. Speaker, I just have a question. I'm sorry about the process. I don't remember from last year. So we're not answering right now any of the questions that you posed?
The process, the process of the budget meeting is to be allowed to have the citizenry come out to be able to discuss the proposal before us, which is the budget. There is opportunity at the budget workshops and throughout the year, throughout the process, for the public to be very involved and ask questions. The last 8 months, to be able to talk to your elected officials and be able to get your points across, your questions answered.
Thank you.
Tonight is an
Sorry, I just
opportunity
couldn't
for, sure, no problem. But tonight is an opportunity for the citizenry to be able to come out and speak at this appropriate time. We'll recess this meeting to go into the referendum where you all have your vote on that, and encourage your friends and neighbors to come out and vote on the budget as proposed. Any questions? Ellen, thanks.
That's okay. Unless, apparently I wasn't supposed to say anything.
You want me to run the timer, Brian? I got a timer set for 3 minutes.
Yeah, if you do that, that'd be.
Yeah, I got it.
That'd be helpful. Yes, sir, I'll go to you then over here. Yes,
Here
sir.
first?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Matt. I've been here for a couple of years.
Matt, I need your full name and address.
Sure, Matt Petricone. I live on Deer Cliff Road,
Full address.
500 Deer Cliff Road.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'd just like to obviously thank the Board of Education for their presentation. I have 2 daughters in school at Pine Grove. They love it, thank you. I was here just to express concern about the public safety budget. It's only up about 1.5%. It's the third largest line item in the budget, and it's up about $150,000. It seems like a nominal amount. My neighborhood's recently been affected by a string of burglaries. If I look at the stats or the data provided by the police department, burglaries are on pace, residential burglaries are on pace to more than double this year. Applications for pistol permits are up over 20%. You can construct a narrative that maybe there's some people in the town not really feeling all that safe. I don't know if I'll put that out there, but for myself, I feel a little bit less safe. It'd be nice to see a cruiser going up and down the street every once in a while. We've got, a text chain that's, 40 people deep. People are concerned, they're looking out their windows. I moved from a town in Fairfield County where I felt pretty safe. Again, this is a nice bucolic small town. I'm just surprised that there's only a $150,000 increase in the budget. And again, I'm not trying to look to take it from anywhere else, but it'd be nice to see a squad car kind of rolling down the street every once in a while. If I have to pay more than happy to do it. Some of the residents on my street were talking about hiring someone private to actually patrol our neighborhood. Some of the people on that street might be able to afford it. Maybe we will do that. But again, I think I've been assessed at 25% more on my home. So I'm just looking to speak up and make my tax dollars work a little harder. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, sir. No, behind you. Oh, you were the guy, the next question. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Want me to come out here? I have a hard time standing, by the way.
Sorry?
Is it okay if I stand here?
Oh, absolutely. You stand there. Please just give your name and address.
Thank you. Bill Sammo. I'm at 14 Cotswold Way. I am a veteran, and I'm here to ask tonight if there's any way to increase our $1,500 exemption off of our assessed property to $10,000. That's my question tonight. Can we do that? And I just want to point out a couple of facts that I've learned recently. There's pretty close to 500 veterans in town, which only comes out to 2.5% of the population. We are not very large, but we are important, and we do thank you for the $1,500, but I've been here 39 years, it has not increased. In reality, it comes out to about $60 a year for me. I was wishing it would come out to a lot more. So with all the increases and everything else in the world that's going on, can I ask, can we go from $1,500 to at least $10,000? Other cities and towns in Connecticut are doing up to $20,000. I know the rules about the $69,000 that you have to have a net on. I get all that, but can we go from 15 to 10 and keep the 69? I don't care about the 69 part. I'm just saying, can we get a little bit more for our veterans in Avon?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
And what we suggest is, tonight's only discussion of the question is the exact amount we mentioned a few times, the 116 million and change. I don't mean to minimize the 87,000 and the rest of it, but I would encourage you to come to the budget workshops next year. I know that sounds like a bad option for you, but it's another time. But at that budget workshop process, it starts in January, February timeframe. The word goes out to the public to be able to come and make those exact kind of requests. Fortunately, tonight we can't open the budget and change numbers around tonight. That's not what's before us as a town. So we have to present this number to the community to vote on the date of the 16th or the 14th. Let me make sure. 15th, in between. But I do encourage you to please come next year to the budget workshops and be able to have your say.
Where will that be published so that we can get that information?
It's published in the town newsletter, goes out there, and also you get that yellow kind of trifold page that goes out. You got a couple of, yeah, thank you, man. You can hold that up. You get those a couple of times a year. It gives you all the important dates. And also, I would encourage you to sign up, and everybody in the room, to sign up on the website. What is the website address again? Is it www.avon.ct.gov? You can sign up for all the meetings in town. You'll get a direct email of when they're happening, what the time is, what the agenda is, all of that. And it's fantastic service that the town provides to educate the people, to let you guys know, all of us know, what the dates are of important meetings, or all meetings. Yes, sir. Yeah, you were first. Yeah.
I would like to bring attention, citizens.
Name and address.
I'm sorry, my name is Paul Philstein. I live at 14 Buckboard Lane, and I would like to bring attention of my town citizens to this fact. You know, all those numbers, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, all those exact amounts, I don't say, misleading is not the right word, but it's very hard to follow it. It's very important for you guys because you need to crank those numbers. For us lay people, it doesn't say much. What does say to me is percentage increase. That's not the percentage of the entire budget, but percentage increase. And what I see is that year after year, our budget increases, and year after year, it overpaces inflation, okay? Well, if we look at inflation now, and again, we're looking for the budget of 24, 25, and we're really hoping that inflation will go down. But if we look at the inflation which is today, all those increases, sometimes 30 and sometimes 40% higher than current inflation. When we look at the budget, for example, you went into great details about Board of Education expenses. We see that salaries, when we said like, okay, salary increase 2.87%, which is less than inflation. The insurance increase 1.6% or whatever. Again, it's less than inflation. But when we look at the total, so every bullet is like less than inflation, but overall it's higher than inflation. So that's signs for me that there is either we're missing something or there is something wrong. Okay, that's my point. I think that again, I understand if that year would be like we have this big project of ruining this nice road which we had, and we're building something monstrosity. But I'm not to judge town voted for this, but maybe I would understand, like big project increase our budget. But when I look bullet by bullet, it just doesn't add up for me. So I just would like to bring attention to this fact.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Yes, my name is Jerry Stinson. I live in Farmington Woods, 29 Byron Drive. And I wanted to just reiterate what my contemporary said here. I'm a member of Post 3272 in Avon. It's very active in the community. A lot of our members are Vietnam vets and have a lot of issues that have come back with them from Vietnam, aside from the 55,000 so that never made it back. And but nevertheless, they partake in the community immensely. And I think Bill here has brought up a very good point that the $1,500 has not increased. There's no increase. There's no inflationary there. So in the coming years, a lot of consideration should be given to that. Our Vietnam vets are aging up, and a lot of them need help because they're fighting disabilities and other issues.
Thank you.
All that's not only Vietnam.
Thank you, sir. And again, thank you too for your service. We truly appreciate it.
It was an honor.
Thank you. Is anyone else who wants to make a comment? Yes, sir.
James Fitzgerald, 25 Kennington Road, and I live in an association which is 55 plus.
Sorry.
I'm watching and I'm running it.
I get some more minutes there.
You got an extra 5 seconds.
So thank you everyone for your service here, on the board of finance, town council, and all those that are involved in the civic government here. What I want to talk about is the budget, and it has to do with the process, and it has to do with some of my findings which go back to last November when I really started to put my eyes onto what's going on here in town relative to the budget. I think transparency is a big issue for me, because when I look at the budget and I look at the annual calendar, which was supposed to be the annual report, if you would. I see that it's missing a little over $2 million, but that $2 million didn't show up until almost November, when the town manager and the director of finance had to scramble and come back to the Board of Finance to say, hey, we need to take this money that we got, earned income on interest of $1.6 million. That's not in the calendar or in the report. So that $1.6 million, where is it now? If you look at this, which we just received in the mail, it's not in here either. Because if it is, it should show as part of an actual for 23-24, and that's not in there. What it does show is budgeted and then projected for 24-25. So where's that 1.6 million? Well, if you look at it, it shows that it's assigned as 1.4 million for next year for the roads. There's another budget that I'm concerned about, and that has to do with capital. It was a capital reserve account. Why would you need a capital reserve account? So they took $500,000 there. The town manager went to the town council, convinced them to say, yes, we can do it. Go to the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance said, no, 2 people as Republicans. The rest said yes, but then they tabled the whole thing, and they said, let's come back, and they had to scramble and do an emergency meeting because they're in the middle of an audit. And I know what that's all about. So they came back and they reassigned it, so now you have $500,000 that says it's part of some other line item, but it's a capital reserve account. Budget it and push it through the process. I give a lot of credit to Republicans that wanted it to be run through the budget process, and they should have, but they got overruled by the other Board of Finance members, and one very rude, what I would say, arrogant new board member who was spewing vitriol after the meeting to one of the other board members who is no longer here. He resigned a few weeks later, and I felt bad for him. And that is just unbecoming conduct of a public official, elected or appointed. But the transparency is not there. So now they expect us to go and vote for this in another week or so, and unless 9% go out and say yes, it's automatically approved. Well, we were talking about special interest. I had a meeting one-on-one with the town manager, and it was very nice. But special interest, in my opinion, was with the fire department. We approved those fire engines.
I'm just going to ask you to
It was with the board. I'll wrap it up. It
this.
was with the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed is special interest, isn't it? Well, I got a shrug. Well, you know what that means. It's special interest. Anything that you vote on in town is going to be a special interest. 2 years ago, 600 people came out and said no, and a handful came out and said yes. It still passed. I think it's a very undemocratic process. You want a referendum for everything, but you want 9% for the budget on the vote, and it's unfair.
Good for you. That's true.
Yes,
And that's true.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
We just said.
There are overages every year. If we were running negative balances at the end of the year, it would be, but there were overages every year that get assigned in ways. It's part of the charter.
It's been in the charter for decades about the 9% rule. That's why it's important to get people to come out and vote their opinion. That's what tonight's about, to be able to talk about it. Thank you, sir.
They're talking about $2 million.
We're talking about the $2 million.
We're not having a bunch of side discussions, ma'am. We're not having side discussions, please. We're not having side discussions. So that's the point of being here tonight, to be able to voice your opinions. It's done ad nauseum all over social media about the 9% rule. Get your friends to come out and vote and be able to get that percentile difference. So it's a very open and transparent process, in that we all know what that rule is, and that's part of the charter. It's part of the ability to come out and talk about it all.
Appreciate that feedback, Mr. Moderator, but it's up to the town council to reverse that and cancel that line in the charter, go back to simple majority.
It's not up to that's part of the charter. It would have to have a charter revision. Hold on, let me just explain that to you.
But,
I'm not going to debate back and forth either, and I shouldn't be doing this. But charter revision is part of the people's charter. This is your charter, to be able to call for a charter revision, and you convince people to have a charter revision, open it up to charter, and be able to get that discussion open. But that's the way the charters work. That's the way this process works. But it's all been transparent. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just along these lines.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. I just want, before you, I need to ask for a second line, if anybody, for a first one there. Yes, ma'am, back there with the flag. Sure, yes.
Yeah, my name is Maureen Wine, 100 Wellington Heights Road. I shouldn't talk, I don't know anything about budgets, you should look at my own. But I really loved the superintendent's speech. You were awesome. Could we have another line in the educational budget to know for how many migrants we're supporting them in Avon?
We don't keep track of that.
We should.
But
Why not? Sure, why not?
There's a Supreme Court case.
Usually, yeah, we're not going to have a debate. I apologize for having a bit of a debate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Listen,
But that's not relevant for tonight. We're not having debates about.
no, I
policy
know.
that's going on.
I'm
So-
sorry.
Right, go ahead.
I hear you, but you did a great job. But I think everyone here who works very hard should know what they're paying for. And I'm so sorry. Honestly, I'm Catholic. And I want to, no, 2 minutes left, I shouldn't be speaking. I don't know budgets at all. But I think Avon should wake up, and when you talk about police, please, I so agree with you. But the state of Connecticut has taken away our police to be police people. So it's bigger than Avon. And the time we get our act together as a small town and say, forget it. I spoke against the sewer project, which I totally believe in, because we took a grant from the state of Connecticut. What did that mean? The state of Connecticut? How great fiscally are they? Are going to take over our zoning? Get a grip. I believe in you. You might not walk my walk, but you came on the board because you believed in this town. That stupid thing near that beautiful scenic route has been destroyed. Who's getting the money for that? I want to know. Tennessee is calling for me. But I believe what my parents were. They were both World War II vets. And this guy is asking for an increase. God bless America.
Yeah, thank you. You're wonderful.
No, I don't talk well at all.
Yes, you do.
But I think each of us should think, what kind of world do you want your little grandchildren to grow up in? I was talking to someone earlier today and I said, we didn't worry about wars. There was a peaceful world. Why? Because the United States was strong.
Thank you, ma'am. Your time is.
Well, you're great. I don't even know your name.
Me?
And I hope you all don't know who I was. Love you all.
I love you too. You were great.
Anybody else wish to speak for the first time tonight? Second time? Yes, sir.
Yeah, sir, I was just gonna ask if there's
You need to state your name, address, and
Matt
everything.
Petroni, 500 Deer Cliff Road.
Thank you.
I was just gonna ask if we could allocate some small portion of budget to digital outreach to some of the younger residents. You made allusion to the fact that we're attracting a lot more people. School budget has to go up for that, but I found it, a little bit surprising what I found in the new assessment. I sit on the front of a computer all day. I don't remember to type in avonct.gov. If there's a way to push out either some sort of form of social media, all the towns have it. Okay, great. Thank you
Facebook
for
and
that.
the email system that you get all the meetings, agendas.
So you have to
everything.
sign up.
You just have to
Just
one
have to
time go to the
Okay.
website, yeah.
Okay.
One time and it'll be in your inbox.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir. Second time.
What is the town?
Please state your name and.
George Michael, 73 Chevis.
Thank you.
What does the town have in reserves?
We have, so we set a, let's see, 14%? Is what we're at right now? Operating 15%. So yeah, we have 15% goal for reserves, and that reserve.
How much is that?
It's around 15 million.
About 15 million? Is that really needed, that much reserve? A few years ago, it was 11 million.
It's an emergency.
Never used it.
It's an emergency fund.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what's recommended.
The whole town would have to be destroyed.
It affects our bond rating. If we didn't have that, it would be much more expensive for bonding. We've had a lot of discussion about this. And we were, at 10%, we were the lowest in the area. We caught up.
But I think you can draw a line and just keep it.
Yeah, we have drawn the line. The line is 15, it is
For the next
15%, 14%.
One of the reasons we had it at 15 was that was a recommendation from our auditors to maintain our high-level bond rate. So we pay lower in interest rates every time we take out a loan because we have that 15%.
Okay, I did not know that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, back there.
Hi, Chip Walters, 56 Stony Corners Road. I'm trying to be a better citizen, a better resident of Avon and more engaged. I encourage everyone here, thanks for coming out, encourage your friends, encourage your neighbors, get them to come out and vote. Honest to God, it's 9%. If we can't get 9% of people to come out and vote, it's pathetic, right? I've always voted, but I've never really participated. You gotta go to town meetings. It sucks you gotta go to town meetings because you can't get the information any other way. You just gotta go. So start going. Tell your friends to go. Tell your friends to weigh in. Tell your friends to vote. Because if you don't vote, you don't have any say. It's just the way it is. And all these this referendum's 9%. All the other referendums, at least the big ones, are pure majority. So like, if 20 people come out, you're gonna lose. 18,000 people in this town, I think it is, right? It's somewhere around 18,000. We're gonna get decisions made by a handful of people. Come out and vote, participate. It sucks, you gotta read the newsletter, you gotta look at social media because there's no other way. But it's a lot better today than it was 5 years ago, where the agenda might be posted on the town website, but no one would ever hear about it, and you'd have to be one of those 5 or 6 people who actually went in order to participate. So just get out and vote. Get out and participate. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Judge. Very, very well said. So thank you very much for that. Yes, sir, back here.
Are you recruiting?
My name is Shane Chung, and I live here for 30 years. 20 years.
Shane, you need to get your address for the record, too, sorry.
161 Carrot Drive for 20 years, and 117 Juniper Drive for 10 years. I moved here in 1994, and I did not prepare to speak, but anyway, I think I did not see many people coming. However, I believe many families, especially new families who bought house, move here, may share the same concern as I have. Because I'm quite concerned about public school. When I moved here in 1994, the public school, as far as I remember, like 9 or 10. Like, for example, Pine Grove School, at least 9 or 10. And I went there, checked why not 10. I remember at that year's 9 when my first daughter was in the public school. And I was told because minorities people not so many, so we have a 9. Otherwise we have a 10. So, but now you check, 9 is 5. So what I'm concerned is going to be down to 3 or 2. That's what I'm concerned. And I think, I remember the budget, 80% for education, right? So any lines or part explaining why the public school going down from 9 to 5? We spend a lot of money. See the result. So why? What is nice town? Education, school is a major part. And also we need a part explain, we spend a lot of money. How we can improve to have public school going back to be nice school as 9 or 10. That's what I'm concerned. And I think a lot of new families who moved here will share what I'm concerned. So I think the budget should have anyway a part explain why going down public school and how can we improve. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am, in the back over there.
I'm Kathy Tam, one extra and according to the assessor calculation, my taxes are also going up 26%, which is, I can't put words around what that means to me. I received this document, the Town of Avon newsletter, in the mail, and really think that it missed a couple of key points. And one of those was that there is this assessor calculator out there available to the citizens, which was not mentioned in this document at all. And it's really very informative for citizens to be able to go on that calculator and see that increase. The other thing is that if the town has, I don't know what the population of the town is, 9% of the vote of the, in order to have the referendum pass, it requires 9% of the population.
It requires a majority of 9% of the voters to come out.
9% for it to
Voters.
Right, voters.
Yes, you have to have 9% of the registered voters come out and vote, and then the majority of them will determine the yes or no in the referendum. If less than 9% come out, then it fails automatically. I mean, it passes automatically if less than 9% come out.
So just doing some rough calculations in my head, I don't know the population of Avon, I'm going to say roughly 20,000 people.
Yeah, but it's the registered voters.
It's the voters.
And there's only, what, 13,000 registered voters. So let's say it's 10%, that's 1,300 people have to vote.
You've got to get, right.
That's not many.
So,
It's shocking how low it is.
yes.
No, it's shocking is how many come out.
It's like 13.
But I did
13,000
happen to
shocking.
look at the vote for our neighboring town of Farmington, which had less than 1,000 people vote on their budget, which passed on their first referendum. And I know that we have a second referendum possibility and a third referendum possibility, both on dates in June, if the first referendum does not pass. I also think that that would have been really good information to share in this budget newsletter.
I would like to point, oh, sorry, I'm stealing your time, I apologize.
Yes, you're taking my time. So, I just think, is that for me?
That's for you, but I have 4 more seconds, that's it.
Oh, okay. So I just would ask in the future that that kind of information be shared. The other piece of information that I think was grossly missing from this, for people to really be informed citizens, is just pointing out to the citizenry, what is it? Thank you, that reminding them that our taxes are going to be based on the new assessment, which for many of us is almost double. So that's.
Thank you very much. I do want to point out one thing, that if there's doom and gloom about that number of 9%, that has successfully been met in previous years. There's been 9% of the voters have come out, and it's happened a couple of.
Barely not.
It has happened at least a couple of times, so that threshold can be met if people come together and they do that. So that's what the vote democracy is about. That's what the transparency of democracy is about. To come out and vote, and it has been successfully defeated in the past. So that 9% number is doable if people organize and get together and come out and support whatever your position is.
Could you explain, please? So if budget fails, what happens next? Is it changes made to the budget, or is the same budget voted in the second time and the third time? How does it work?
Here I am saying we're not allowing questions, and I'm kind of pulling them together. I don't know off the top of my head.
I have comments. I thought we were just commenting.
I know, that's what I thought you said that was my comment, my time, so I apologize for bringing that up in discussion. I'm not sure, that'll be on the website, we can get that information served to you, what the full process is for the next meeting. Is it, yes, sir?
I don't need 3 minutes, man. I just want
You have to say your name and address.
James Fitzgerald, 25 Pennington Road, of course, Avon. And I want to make sure I'm clear, so that $2 million is in there now, but it's in the new budget, okay? It's not in the actuals because they did not account for it at the end of 23-24 when June 30th ended, and it wasn't manipulated into assigned numbers. So when somebody like I or somebody else comes on and say, oh, it's a sign so you can't touch it, well, you think that it's already budgeted and it's already accounted for, and it's not. It's just a dodge, and it's not being transparent to the public, in my opinion. The other comment that I have, and I'll be very quick on it, is, and I appreciate the Board of Ed and their presentation, but when I look at it in terms of the new salaries, it's not 3 positions. It's really 19 new positions because the other positions were unbudgeted from last year, so now you have to backfill that money this year for those positions. So when you look at it, 7, 7, and 1, that's 15. I'm looking at it, it only tells me that those are new positions because you didn't have the money last year, so now you're coming this year for that money. And I'd also question, how did you get those new positions last year if they were not budgeted? There was one that was based on a grant, so you got the money for that one. So that is going to be 15 or 16, and then you got the 3 new ones that the superintendent was talking about. So I would be questioning that, and particularly, how do you show what budget drivers are when you really cannot show year to year what the increase or decrease is in the student population for each grade across each school? And I think that's important to really know what is the cost per student in town. And I think you should separate what the salaries and benefits are for special ed versus what regular ed is. So there's clear transparency there also. Thank you.
Why aren't you up there?
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else who would like to make comments tonight? That's a very good point. Anyone else like to make comments tonight?
Wow.
And I do have everybody's
one more
tax
time,
increase
sir.
right here.
Does anyone else like to make comments tonight?
I have everything.
Go ahead.
So I,
Name and address for the record.
Deal, 41 Tyler Court. So first of all, thank you to the council and the Board of Ed, who are all volunteers. I think that's important. Somebody said it earlier. I'm sorry, Board of Finance. To elaborate on what the gentleman over here was talking about, as I think we all know, interest rates have been up dramatically in the last 2 years, right? Anybody who's trying to get a mortgage understands that, right? What the gentleman is referring to is that the town of Avon, on its cash, has made a huge amount more money than they budgeted in the budget. Some of the people on the Board of Finance tried to bring this up in the budget, and that's a positive variance that ought to have been used to reduce the budget, and was not. I think it's pretty obvious. I think everybody in this room can understand when interest rates are up, you're making more money on your cash. Everybody in the room is probably, right? Avon's making more money on its cash. That positive variance ought to have been built into the budget and would have resulted in a lower tax increase. And as people have said, right, everybody around the room, and I would encourage everybody to go to the calculator and figure out what are your exact taxes going to be, because with a revaluation year, there's a lot of shifting, and that happens every time. But condo owners are going to take it a little harder. Commercials getting a benefit. Again, there's always a shifting, but because there's an increase, and because the economic times are a little challenging right now, I think people ought to go to that. The town has a great calculator on the website. Go to that page, figure out your individual result, and encourage your neighbors to come out. Because honestly, 9%, it's true, it has been voted down in the past, but it's pretty embarrassing. So I'm the deputy registrar of voters as well. It's embarrassing that we can't get 9% turnout in a town election that's about our town, right? I mean, people are excited about national elections. This is our town, right? It's just us. It's just the 18,000 people within our borders, right? It's embarrassing that we can't get 9% of the town, 9% of the registered voters in the town to show up for that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm only going to do it once this time. Is there any other questions or comments, rather, from the audience tonight?
If anybody wants to know what their tax increase is, I have it right here, from last year to this year. I'd be more than happy to share it with you. I took what they put on the town and put in every number, the old mill rate, the new mill rate with the reval, what your assessment increases are, what your percentage increase is, not just on your assessment, but also what your tax increase is monthly and also as a percentage.
That is available on the town website as well.
No, it's not. No, it's not. This is the
calculators involved on the
Just
town
the
website.
percentages, is not.
but everything else.
All right. Is there any other comments now that I don't see any comments? So after all the discussion and no further discussion, the budget will be submitted to a vote for referendum on on Wednesday, May 15th, 2024 at the Avon Senior Center, Community Room 635 West Avon Road, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. Go out and vote. Thank you.